Welcome to this episode of SBJ Live. I'm Dan Kaufman with Sports Business Journal. Thank you for joining us. As you're making your way into the platform here, I will go over some of the bells and whistles that we have here for your enjoyment and for your engagement, frankly. So welcome. Thanks for joining us. We have on the right-hand side, as you come in here, check out, there's a chat tab. We really encourage you to introduce yourself in that chat tab. Tell us who you are, where you're coming from, and if you see people who are messaging within the chat tab and you want to say hello to them, please do that. We encourage that type of interaction and engagement. So please do that as you're joining the platform here. And then directly to the right of that chat tab, you'll see a questions tab. That's where we want you to submit your questions. SBJ Live is a really productive exercise for us because it is live and because we can get your questions and we can weave them into the conversation throughout. So what does that mean? Don't wait till the end. There's no specific Q&A period. Put your questions in the questions tab as soon as they pop into your head, and then upvote questions you want to make sure that we get to. There's an upvote feature in there as well. So 2 rules for you guys that I hope you'll do for me. Message in the chat, tell us who you are, what you do, and where you're coming from. Chat with people there, and then put your questions in the questions tab. I've got questions for the guys here, but I want to make sure that we get your questions answered. This is How the Sports Industry Uses Artificial Intelligence, Part 3. This is the 3rd part of our How the Sports Industry Uses Artificial Intelligence series. It's with support of Sportradar. Thank you so much to Sportradar for the support for this 3-part series. This one is focused on AI-driven sponsorship, monetization, and marketing. The 2 other sessions, we will drop links to them in the chat, and you can watch them on demand if you'd like to. Thank you for joining us for this 3rd session. And again, thank you to Sportradar for the support. I'm going to go over an overview of what we're going to cover in a minute. But first, I want to give each of our panelists about 30 seconds to a minute to introduce themselves. And I will start with Randy. Randy, over to you.
Hi, I'm Randy Sollenberger. I oversee the NFL's live content correspondence program, known as the LCC program. We are a network of content creators based in every NFL market and worldwide, capturing photo and video to power the NFL content ecosystem, in particular NFL social. Content goes widely across the NFL ecosystem. So NFL social, the clubs, players, partners, and anywhere across the league.
Thank you, Randy. Hampus.
Thank you, Dan. Hi, everyone. I'm Hampus Loftus from Sportradar, VP of Global Sales of Marketing Services. I have a background in sports marketing. I've worked rights holder and agency side. And today I manage a global advertising and sponsorship sales and client partner team here at Sportradar. So within that team, we work with rights holders, we work with sports betting operators, brands across various industries, helping them engage with sports fans at every step of their commercial journey, using really kind of the power of sport to deliver relevant, personalized, and of course, targeted advertising campaigns. So glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Hampus. Joining us all the way from Australia, Daniel.
Thank you, Dan. It's great to be here. So I'm Daniel Kirshner. I'm co-founder and CEO of Greenfly. We are a software platform for the collection, organization, and distribution of content, working with partners all around the world, powering the content collection flows for most of the major sports leagues, including working with folks like Randy at the NFL. So powering the collection of content in venue, organization of content with AI tools and distribution of content to everyone from the athletes to partners to, of course, supporting the social media teams and marketing teams of our partners.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, all of you. All right, here's what we're going to hit on today. I'm going to go over kind of the core themes, and then we're going to bring it back, and I'm going to ask each of our panelists to summarize the most important issue in their mind when it comes to using artificial intelligence to improve sponsorship and potentially improve ROI for a partner or a sponsor. I see us talking about video clipping, both broadcast and non-broadcast, how that is helping this process. I see us talking about personalization, or smarter audience targeting. I see us talking about extending sponsorship value across channels, not just within the broadcast or the social media channel even necessarily. And then I see all of that coming together to help us demonstrate how we're finding the ways to provide a better product to a partner, to a fan, and the synchronization between that partner value that they are expecting and the fan value that they're expecting, and how that all comes together. So, and then we'll close it all by talking about what we think about the future of artificial intelligence and it comes to its use cases for sponsorship maximization and sponsorship benefits. That's a lot. We've got 40 minutes. We're going to do our best. I promise we won't go too much longer than that. So with that, let me flip it to Daniel to start, since I closed with you for the introduction, Daniel. Daniel, this is the way I'm going to phrase the question. I think you can go in a number of different directions, but what are the most important issues that you think about on a daily basis when it comes to using artificial intelligence to improve the experience of a corporate sponsor? You're muted, Daniel.
Sorry, I'm muted. Thank you, Dan. It's a great question, and I'm really happy to be here to talk about it. I think when we think about sports, we think about just the incredible number of awesome moments on the field, off the field, behind the scenes, all the sorts of incredible stuff that's happening, and all the kind of content, sponsor relevance around that content. So there's a desire for sponsors to attach themselves to that content in ways where they can really, help bring that content to the world. There's also a lot of sponsors integrated into the experience, sponsors appearing in venue in different formats, in signage, in product, and all these kinds of things. And so when we think about artificial intelligence, the opportunity there and the opportunity around machine learning, there's really a special opportunity to process the incredible amount of content, information, and opportunity around events and make sure that the most relevant pieces of that content, the most powerful, the most compelling, the most relevant from a sponsor perspective, are getting out to the fans, are getting out to the most relevant fans, are being connected with in the most relevant way. And so really AI and machine learning and these tools, I think about, we think about, there's obviously like production opportunities and things like that, but when you think about like generative AI, like who cares if you can create an artificial spectacular moment? What matters is the real moment. The question is, how do you connect that real moment to the fan? How do you connect the sponsor integration with that real moment to the fan and the fan experience? And how do you really make sure that the most relevant parts of these incredible games and these incredible experiences are connecting to the fans in the most meaningful ways, in the ways that build the most value for the sponsor, for the rights holder, and for the partners.
Thank you, Daniel. I heard, if I could summarize just a little bit, I heard a lot of talk about relevance, which I think is very important. So maybe we can get back to that. Hampus, over to you. Same question. What would you add to what Daniel said?
Daniel mentioned moments, right? Which for us is very relevant as well currently. I think particularly in this kind of attention economy, right, where sport is one of these last kind of true appointment to view events where you can get that real attention, you get the real emotion, you get the scale. And I think from an advertising, but also sponsorship perspective, in the past, a lot of the campaigns were really planned around a calendar. So effectively matches, right? And then some tentpole events within that calendar. That made sense. You need a lot of preparation to prepare creatives, to kind of plan, how you're going to communicate with the fan base around these matches. But what that was kind of missing was obviously what happens within the games. And that's where it gets really good, right? For us who enjoy sports, like, fans care about the game, yes, but they ultimately care about what happens within the game, who scores, who sets a new points record. The amount of moments that are happening like within every sports game is endless, right? So that's for an advertiser or a sponsor, to be able to capitalize on those moments. That's the real like huge opportunity that we see right now. And as Daniel mentioned as well, using AI and machine learning as part of the ad tech which is available, such as what we're doing at Sportradar, that's making that activation possible, like accelerating the speed at which you can basically react to what's happening on the field of play, and kind of using tech married with years of data in our experience to kind of serve up very reactive kind of messaging for fans to engage with. I think that's really exciting and where a lot of our focus is going right now.
Thank you, Hampus. Randy, from your perspective, from a property rights holder's perspective.
Yeah, the big focus for us is just the speed at which we're able to distribute content and how we're able to organize that content. It's just grown light years in the past few years here. Our team's generating thousands of assets a week, hundreds of thousands of assets a year. So to be able to make sure that content is getting to the right places in a timely manner, in in the social world. It all comes down to timing. So to be able to accelerate that of making sure we're accurately distributing content to partners, to stakeholders, just goes a long way. And AI has really powered our ability to have an organized library of content that we're able to get to the right places in a timely manner. It's something that was a big evolution for us over the past few years, and it continues to be a priority for us.
Thank you, Randy. It's interesting. We had on episode 2 of this series, we had a representative from the NBA on, and he talked. I mean, similar stuff that you guys said, but he talked all about how quickly he is able to scan and cut video content at this point, and then distribute that video content. And so I want to transition to that video clipping, but I want to make sure that we're tying it to the sponsor, right? So how is the video clipping process, which you understand is incredibly streamlined, and let's talk a little bit about that, but how is that helping to improve monetization from a sponsorship perspective? Daniel, I'll probably start with you. I mean, I know there's a couple examples I think you could talk through specifically with Greenfly, but let's dive into the video clipping, both for broadcast and non-broadcast media.
Yeah, I mean, again, to your point, there's a lot of incredible tools out there that make it possible to generate pieces of content from longer form pieces of content, and also to really identify the most relevant pieces of content. I think when you think about it from a sponsor perspective, it really comes at it from a couple of different angles. Like, one is there's the opportunity to attach sponsorship to this content, so the opportunity to generate a lot more really quality, compelling content, and really attach sponsorship to the content to make that, a marketable, packageable asset. So just the way, you sponsor broadcast, you can sponsor this kind of content. And what sponsors love about this kind of content, short form content, whether it's coming from a longer broadcast piece or that's an original piece, of kind of stuff that, like, Randy's team is generating, like from that field, that vertical video behind the end zone of the touchdown with the guy running at the camera, like those kinds of moments, is that they travel incredibly well across digital and social platforms. So if there's sponsorship attached to it, that's something that value travels, and that value is being built, and it's reaching an audience that may even miss the live event. If you think about the number of people that consume an incredible moment in sports, it's much greater than the number of people that saw it live. If you missed it, you're a sports fan, you're going to see it because it's going to be everywhere. And so that's really powerful. The other thing that's really powerful, of course, is the sponsor integration in that content, the sponsor signage. Like when you think about, jersey patches, jersey logos, like all those kinds of elements. When you're a sponsor and you're buying that thing, you're not just buying it for the person in the stadium. And of course, you can virtually personalize it much more than the person in the stadium. You can have it, for different markets, flowing out in different ways and that kind of stuff, which is really cool as well. But you're buying it because it's appearing again in this content as it travels. And if you have an iconic goal and it's got your brand logo behind it, that's the golden moment that you're hoping for. So that's another way that it's really traveling. And when you think about that, you're thinking about both direct value for the rights holder and having something that they can package and sell, and then indirect value in terms of building a lot of earned media value for that content, and that being something that gets factored into the sponsorship packages as they come together and really continue to build a ton of value. There's also the opportunity, frankly, to sell that content directly through subscription services, things like that, through packages to broadcast partners or other kind of digital distribution partners. Like, that's an asset that you can sell media rights against as well. So, I mean, there's all these different ways. Like, you have an incredibly valuable asset, which is a short form piece of content, which is, the kind of content a lot of fans really want to consume these days. That's something that you can realize value in all sorts of ways.
Thank you, Daniel. There are a couple things that I picked up on there. One, I really liked how you phrased it with the direct value and the indirect value. So the direct value of the automation that's taking place with the clipping and the delivery of those clips, but it's the indirect value to the sponsor of the additional exposure of their logos, theoretically, right? Assuming that their logos are pictured within the video itself. Hampus, would you add to what Daniel said, and then maybe if there are examples that you can tie Sportradar into this, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, I think value, as we think about sponsorship activation, like that was for me always kind of the key when we started understanding, like, how do you get the most out of your sponsorships, right? You pay a lot of money to be associated to a team or a league, but obviously then you have to go further and invest a lot into how you activate that. And I think the best activations that you've seen for sports sponsorship for the years are really the ones who always put the fan in the middle of it and say, right, how am I going to add value to the fan by my activation. I'm not just doing something to get my logo out there as much as possible. I'm actually thinking about the fan and like, am I adding something to his or her like day-to-day experience in terms of how they can connect, engage, discover, play, whatever it is in regards to the team or player that you know you're sponsoring. So I think again, using these tools to kind of unlock new content and to then start personalizing it, that's where you know she comes in as well. And from an advertising point of view, it's similar, right? Because you're exposed to so many ads every day, right? I read some stat recently. It's like see between 4,000 and 10,000 ads a day. It's crazy, right? They're everywhere. You probably don't realize it, but they are, right? So the power of the creative, I think, is really key in terms of like making sure that you're standing out as much as you can within that very cluttered space. And using AI to kind of tie back into the previous point to you know power that creative with what's happening in around all these moments, that I think is really cool. So in our world, when it comes to sports data, you know, making sure that that creative is powered by things like scores, odds, milestones, you know, generating very relevant, hyper relevant content, which is then tailored by platform, you know, all in kind of real time, you know, leading up to the game, what's happening within the game. Again, making sure that the creative that the advertiser is putting out there is again trying to add a little bit of value to the experience of the fan, because you're reacting, you know, team A scores, then obviously the odds, you know, are going to change, and then you can, you know, advertise against that. So creative, I think, is often almost even a little bit undervalued when it comes to like the attention that should go into making sure that the creative for the advertiser is utilizing all these assets. And that's something where if you use like tools that are available, dynamic creative optimizations, which is basically AI powered technology, then yeah, you should be looking to make use of that to add that value.
Thank you, Hampus. You mentioned a couple things. One was personalization, and we're going to jump to that in just a second. But before we do, I want to give Randy a chance to comment on this. Randy, I believe that you've worked with Greenfly to identify content within a video. I don't know how far that's gotten from a identifying sponsor perspective, but talk to us about what you all have done already when it comes to using AI to clip video and identify content within the video.
Yeah, it's been a huge addition for us to just be able to categorize content by NFL club, by player, for us to be able to sort and organize content, right? You have this big bucket of content, but if you don't know what's in there, it doesn't do you a lot of good if you're trying to offer that as an option for social content or for partners. So for us to be able to have stuff organized in a way that's easy to package and share out has just been remarkable for us. You know, whether it be players arriving to the stadium, whether it be celebrations on the field, post-game handshakes, fan interactions, any of that kind of stuff, being able to have that organized in a way that's easy to find that right asset for that right partner for the right post and social has just been a huge addition for our team.
And Randy, and are you using it not just to identify athletes, but also to identify a brand logo that you want to share then with a brand partner, or is it just one and maybe two down the line?
Yeah, that's further down the line for us. It hasn't been a world that we've gotten into, but the potential is immense.
Got it. And Daniel, maybe real quickly, do you want to expand a little bit on how it's being used currently for identifying the athlete and how there might be a use case for identifying something else, whether that's a brand logo or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, to Randy's point, you know, in a real-time moment in games, you're creating incredible, you know, quantity and quality of content. So the key is like, how do you make sure that you're seeing the most relevant, important content and getting it distributed, you know, to the most relevant, important place? And one thing that, you know, that our technology can do, you know, is to help tag and organize that content, but also route that content to different stakeholders based on those criteria. So people are able to easily find what's relevant for them. And you can kind of set up and structure that criteria. You know, that includes the ability to identify brands, brand logos, and the appearance of those, you know, the relevance to them, like the visibility of them, things like that. And, you know, it depends on sort of, you know, what the focus is at a given time in terms of how that's used. but everything from automated feeds of content that feature brand logos to just being able to make sure that okay, if you're finding the moment, you got a bunch of different angles, which angle is gonna yield the most brand value, and you're balancing against the kind of finding the right kind of relevance and the right match. But that's something that's increasingly important to folks that we work with, is being able to really sort and identify content by brand criteria in addition to other kind of criteria in terms of what's happening in the moment, who's featured in it, what teams are featured, things like that as well.
Thank you. I'm going to jump to personalization and smarter audience targeting. So I'm going to shift to that focus, and I'm going to jump to campus in a minute. But before I do, I want to thank the audience members for putting questions in the chat. I see a couple in there that we will get to. So keep those questions coming in, and keep talking to keep chatting with folks in the chat itself and saying hello and introducing yourself. Campus, I want to talk about personalization. I know Sportradar focuses on it. And one example that I think I wanted you to hit on was maybe, fan ID segmentation and how you're using that to maybe deliver better quality value to a partner or an advertiser. Talk us through that.
Sure. I think there wouldn't be a marketing panel these days without personalization, right? Specifically as it comes to AI. So we were bound to get here. I think to kind of tie it into the discussion today, right? Sponsors who are buying rights, in this case sports, they're buying this access, right? So they're buying access to the rights of exposure, but also to kind of speak very directly to this very engaged fan base, right? And you got to get that right as a sponsor. And in advertising, a lot of the kind of personalization that's been done historically has been cookie based, right? That's kind of how that works. Where sponsors, I think, if you pay the right to play by being a sponsor, you have, or arguably should have, access to also personalize your marketing campaigns, not just based upon cookies. And that's tapping into first or even zero party data, right? Where fans kind of voluntarily giving their data to teams and leagues when you sign up for their services. So where we sit in that kind of ecosystem, this was an obvious area for us to invest in, and ultimately to add value to our clients, finding solutions for how to do this. And where Fan ID comes in is basically creating these unified profiles from often kind of fragmented fan data that sits across various platforms and devices, rights holder side, and doing so in a very privacy safe environment. So basically it's using clean room technology infrastructure, which never exposes the actual raw data, but you still then allow the teams and leagues to allow their brands, in this case sponsors, to kind of tap into the data in terms of how they are using targeting mechanics. So this is powered by AI, obviously, because that's the underlying technology. And I think it's really it's early, but it's very obviously timely. Who knows what's kind of happening with cookies? It seems to at some point be going away, or at least not being used as they are today, right? So value of first and zero party data is only becoming even more important, and teams and leagues sit on a lot of it, right? So putting the solutions in place for rights holders, in our case we work with global federation leagues around the world, most of the large ones in the US, unfortunately not Randy's organization currently, but past partner Sportradar. Helping them basically unlock this is a big focus for us. And it goes beyond then also just what today, because then you can start looking into also intent. And intent's very powerful when it comes to obviously what brands want to know, and not just what we know about this person today, who do they follow, what do they like, but tapping into intent in terms of the ads that you can then serve. Really interesting stuff. So Fan ID, big focus for Sportradar. Interested to hear kind of also how my co-panelist, and probably not Randy's exact part of the business, right? But I'm sure the NFL are also looking at first zero-party data a lot in terms of how the partners can utilize it.
Yeah, Daniel or Randy, feel free to jump in when it comes to first-party data or personalization, how AI is helping to maximize what we can do with that data.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about, first-party data, fan data, and things like that is it creates an opportunity to connect the experience with, the most relevant and compelling, content. And so you need data on both sides to do that. You need to have really rich data about, what the content is, what the brands are, the relevance, the experience. And then you need to have rich data around the fan. And with those two pieces, you can really connect the most relevant, compelling and highly engaged content. And that kind of targeting, if you want to call it that, whatever, is really relevant. It's great for the fan because they're really able to really connect with what they're most interested in really easily. And it's great for the rights holder and the brand because they're able to build the best possible connection with that fan. And so, I think the thing about having lots of content, lots of moments, lots of things going on is it creates lots of opportunity for lots of different kinds of experiences around an event in terms of what's tied to most relevant. And that's something that we're looking at a lot. Like when we look at data in our platform, we look at a few different forms of data. Like first of all, we look at data for all this content that's being created. What content is being chosen to be used? Like what content is the NFL using of the content that they're creating? And that's going to help feed and inform what content they want to create more of, right? What is the stuff that's most relevant, that has highest utilization rate, and then how can that inform the kind of content that they're creating? So there's what's being chosen, and then as content flows out into the world, what can we do to help track like how that content is performing and resonating? So then you want that to help feed the content that's being selected and the content that's being created, and create a kind of virtuous cycle where you're really maximizing the quality and quantity and relevance of that content. And then that first party data piece, the fan data piece, enables you to really connect that content with the fan experience. And even a quote traditional linear viewing experience is increasingly being done through some kind of streaming experience where there's a lot more personalization opportunities. So you think about these big leagues, something like the NFL, obviously the vast majority of the content's being consumed in this linear format, by watching a broadcast. But if that broadcast is going through, whether it's a partner like Amazon or even a traditional broadcaster who's delivering that increasingly through digital channels, there's a lot more personalization that can appear there. Everything from personalizing, in-venue ads to personalizing, the commercials during the commercial breaks to really personalizing an auxiliary experience. Like how do fans want their broadcast experience to be? Do they want to have access to short form content alongside the broadcast experience? You have different commentators and things like that. So there's a lot of ability to really increasingly personalize the experience. It's going to drive relevance, drive engagement, and drive value for all the parties involved.
Thank you, Daniel. There's a lot of questions from the audience, so I want to encourage the audience to upvote the questions that you want to make sure that we get to. We'll try to get to all of them. Before I get to audience questions, though, I do want to get to maybe what I would say is like one of the bigger issues that I think people are asking about, and that's how do we make sure that we take all of this in some sort of actionable way, and then are we finding use cases where we're really delivering additional value to a sponsorship relationship because of artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence has made that easier to show the ROI. And I heard, of course, we talked about how there's more quantity of videos and more opportunity for the video to be exposed to more eyeballs as a result of AI video clipping and distribution. How are we tracking that, I suppose, is the first part of that question. And then the second part of that question is, are there additional methods of showing concrete ROI to a partner that we just haven't hit on yet and you want to make sure we bring up? Daniel, can I stick with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're tracking it. It's being tracked in a number of ways. Like certainly, our partners have really rich data tools that they're using to track it. We're also tracking it. So we're tracking all the data, as I said, about the content that's being used on our platform, how it's being selected, what's happening to that content inside our environment, and then we're also working to help track that content as it flows out of our environment. So if it's going on an owned and operated platform, by a league or something like that, like we would not have access to data, but they would. So they'd be able to really interpret and use and analyze that data. If it's going out in social channels, we're working to really track that and see where it's going, how it's performing, and also doing things like working with partners to help ascertain earned media value and then deliver that back, so earn media value, around brand sponsorship and things like that, working with folks like Blinkfire on stuff like that. So, I think we're trying to connect as much as possible the data of around the content as it's consumed with the data around the content as it's created, with the middle layer of data around how that content is being managed and selected and analyzed to create as much visibility and information as possible to really drive maximum value. And it's impossible to do that kind of analysis without AI. I mean, that it would take an army of people, and it would not be cost effective. But with AI, you can start to really get that level of personalization, categorization, and information that really enables you to really maximize the quality and value of the content that you're creating.
I'm going to preface my next question with a football analogy. If we're on the 1 yard line, just hypothetically, if we're on the 1 yard line of trying to use AI to maximize our partner relationships, how much farther do we have to go? Or let me rephrase it entirely. Let's just say, how far are we? We got to get from the 1 yard line to a touchdown. How far are we before we get there?
I don't know if that's directed back toward me or I mean, I think, I think like a lot of things, like, we've made a ton of progress, and you can kind of see the vision, but there's still, a lot of opportunity to unlock, and I think what's really interesting about even just the short form content that's being created now is, you go back just even a few years, and that content was not that highly valued, even inside of organizations. Like, you don't have to go back very far to say, oh, we want to get some nice stuff out on social, and we hope that yields value by driving tuning or attendance. And now these organizations are waking up, and the brands are waking up and saying, wait a minute, for a lot of fans, this is a huge part of the experience. This is a huge thing they're focused on. This is a lot of what they're consuming. And if we view that as just kind of incidental, then we're not really serving them with what they're excited about. And if we don't recognize it as an opportunity to build value, then we're just leaving a lot of value on the table, because we're not monetizing at all a huge part of the fan experience. And so, I think just that, that kind of recognition is, it's relatively recent. I think everybody understands it at this point. When it comes to really realizing the value with sponsor relationships, really tracking earned media value, really making sure you're maximizing it. I think everybody is thinking through right now, like how to do that in the most efficient way, in the most effective way. And I think you can see these tools and the kind of stuff that we're doing, other folks in the space are doing, are starting to really, create the possibility of really being able to fully analyze, personalize, optimize. But there's still some dials to be turned, and a lot of opportunity. And the tech is only getting better. It's only getting faster. It's only getting cheaper. And so all those things, I think there's still a lot. I think we're, not to switch to a different sport, but I think we're still in the relatively early innings when it comes to really realizing the value here.
I think I jump ball.
Sorry, Dan.
Throw in a third, but so go ahead. Hampus, over.
I was going to say, I think it was on one of the previous panels where you asked a similar question, and somebody said, like, well, it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about like how to use the internet in like our business, right? And now like it underpins like anything we do. And we're talking about how are we using AI? How are we going to use AI? And there'll probably come a point where it's just like, well, it's just there in everything that we're all doing, right? And already it's been in our business for a long time. It's talked about a lot more now. But yeah, I think there's obviously, as Dan was, also explaining in his business, like there are very tangible ways that it has already driven, very like stark benefits, right? Like being able to personalize, creative at scale across, every channel that we run creatives on: mobile, social, CTV, there's a lot of home, web. Like being able to do that in real time, reacting to what's happening with moments of the game, like all that wouldn't be possible. And it's very easy to do now. Like the tech is there, right? Our partners are tapping into this technology, using it, seeing like the benefits and the uplifts, you know, in terms of how they track performance, whether that's a lower CPA or whether it's a brand uplift or whatever, you know, depending upon the channel, and kind of really being able to follow the whole customer journey or fan journey in terms of like how they're experiencing sport, making sure that, you know, the creative is synced. That's, I think, you know, been pretty drastic change and acceleration. But I also agree with Dan that there's a lot more to come. But that's where it's exciting to work for these companies, right? Like Sportradar, lucky to be at one where, you know, we're also, you know, at the very middle of developing, you know, what that next step is, right? And speaking to our partners and clients about, you know, their needs and then coming up with solutions against that.
Thank you, Hampus. I'm going to get to the highest voted question, and it's from Rod Carlson. And the way Rod has phrased this question, I think maybe we haven't done the most concrete job of saying, like, this is the AI that was applied to this task. So Rod, thank you for asking the question. But Rod's question is this: on these success stories, which we talked about a lot, what specific tasks were done with AI that could not be created with standard processes? So don't hesitate to go back to what we've talked about already, guys, but maybe let's reiterate the use cases that worked and could only be done with AI. And this is a jump ball. Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking from the kind of stuff that we do, like the tagging, categorizing, organizing content in real time as it's being created, as it's being uploaded, could not be done without AI. Or to put it more exactly, could be done with a lot of time and a lot of people over a long period of time, you know, in which case the relevancy of that content would have declined drastically, and the ability to find and use it effectively, you know, would not be there. So, you know, those are the kinds of things that, you know, that really are, you know, I think transformational and are impossible without AI.
Yeah, I said what I was just saying before, like being able to, for example, serve up creative assets instantly using live data feeds that are reacting to what's happening in the stadium, whether it's on CTV at home or in the digital out of home ad outside the stadium as fans are leaving. You know, that wouldn't be possible without that technology today. And we have a partnership with Broadsign, you know, where we automate real-time digital out of home ads, you know, triggered by match data. No manual updates are needed. It's really cool stuff, and it's the kind of things which fans are like you react to, right? You walk out of a game, you know, your team won, or maybe they didn't win, and then you personalize the creative against that, right? It opens up some pretty interesting kind of creative opportunities.
Thanks for the question. That question came through from Rod Carlson. Thank you, Rod. I'm going to jump to a question from Nicholas Mueller. Nicholas phrases it this way: given your experience working with scalable AI technologies in sports, from content to data monetization, what do you see as the biggest white space in the current AI times sports ecosystem that's still underutilized by leagues, rights holders, or startups? And then I'll add a nuance to that question that I was going to ask Randy. But Randy, the question that I would love to hear from you as a representative from the NFL is, like, what are we still not doing that you wish we could do? So I'll give you a chance to answer that maybe after either Daniel or Hampus jumps in on the first part of this question. What's the current biggest white space that you guys see? And maybe it's the same. Maybe Randy, you know, can tell us what it is.
You want to go, Randy, or
no? Go for
it. I mean, I was going to say, I think the, you know, we talk a lot about, you know, personalization and customization, and I think that's really in its infancy. It's not to the degree that it's being discussed. The opportunities there, the technology is getting there, you know. But you know, I think when you look at the kind of personalization and customization you see in the social world generally versus the kind of stuff that, you know, you're really seeing in this environment around the sports content, I think there's a lot. I don't know if to call it white space, because it's not like it's not happening, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth there, and that's going to really you know, create an explosion of you know, value in a way that you've seen in other formats, like in traditional social formats.
Great answer. Thanks, Daniel. Hampus?
Link to that for me, it's what I mentioned before in regards to like how you use AI and like clean room technology to unlock like the power of first and zero party data. I think that's still not fully utilized by enough teams and leagues rights holders to the full potential, and understandably, because teams and leagues have responsibility to obviously make sure that how you manage your fan data and what you do with it is orchestrated very carefully, right? These are your fans at the end of the day. But using technology and AI-driven technology to allow your closest partners, who are with you for a long time, to build experiences using that data, I think is an exciting opportunity, which we are still at the early stages of.
Thank you, Hampus. Randy, over to you. What is it that we're not doing that you need?
On the content production distribution side, I think being able to just further organize content, whether it be scene recognition, action that's happening on the field. If the guy in the white jersey throws at the guy in the red jersey, it's not going to the team or to the partner that would be relevant to the interception. So just diving more into what AI is able to do for us in scene recognition would go a long way.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks for the question, Nicholas. All right, this question's got the second most upvotes. I'm going to get to it. It's from Evan Prosser. Evan, thank you for the question. Evan is asking a privacy-related question. With fan segmentation and zero-party data on the rise, how are you navigating privacy concerns when personalizing content or ads using AI? Jump ball, or I'm happy to call on someone.
I think for us, it's like the Fan ID platform that we've built, right, is using the clean room infrastructure, which means that in place, like it's been built around the regulation in place. So in Europe, it's GDPR. There's different kind of regulations in different parts of the world, right? And making sure that it's compliant and privacy safe was the starting point of doing all this. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. So I think for me, there is technology in place where you're not actually sending across any raw data, and you're allowing brands. You can decide who you want it to be, whether it's sponsors, brands. Maybe you start with sponsors because they are your partners and they're invested into your business for a duration of years. And you start giving them access to how you can leverage the data and the personalization of your campaigns. And for us, that's the Fan ID platform that we've built and that we're excited about rolling out with some of our major team and league partners.
Thank you, Hampus. All right, we are at nearly the 45-minute mark, so we're going to run out of time very quickly here if we haven't already run out of time. To the audience, thank you so much for sticking around. I'm going to get to one more question, and we'll close it on this one. The question comes in, it's a great one. It comes in from Eileen McManaman, and Eileen's question is reiterating a point that I want to make sure we leave our audience with, and that's maybe are there better ways to deliver ROI measurement for a partner? And I'm going to give you guys each a chance to kind of sum up on this question. And I'll phrase it. I'll read Eileen's question literally. Consistent issues in partnerships are satisfactory ROI measurement, reporting, greater understanding of the partner's business objectives, and bringing new creative thinking to any partnership activation. Any insights you can leave the audience on embedding AI, working with AI into these aspects of your work or a partner's work? Let's leave the audience with that if we can. And I'll start with Randy.
Yeah, good question. For us, we're constantly working with partners to figure out what their priorities are and how we can help deliver on their needs. Being able to get content to them in a timely manner has just been huge for us and a big focus for us.
Thank you, Randy. Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good question. I think first of all, being able to really organize content in a way that when there's sponsored activations, you're making sure that the most relevant content is connecting with that sponsor, and being connected with that sponsor is really critical. I think the measurement tools are continuing to get better in terms of really tracking the quality and value of that content as it goes out into the world, and bringing back things like earned media value in meaningful numbers, as opposed to just kind of broader metrics, but actually trying to convert that into actual advertising value, things like that. I think, there's a lot to unpack in this question, because like I think the new and creative thinking is just really relevant. I think being able to really have a really great view of the opportunities, the kinds of content that can be created, really enable you to really have really meaningful conversations with partners around what kind of content they want to be associated with, and really enable you to run like really interesting, novel campaigns around things like arrivals or things like that weren't even like viewed even relatively recently as content of value.
Thank you, Daniel. Hampus, the last word is yours.
Yeah, cool. I think, listening to your clients' needs is the key for any business, right? And for us, that was a big part of why we also invest a lot in the kind of dynamic creative technology that I mentioned, I think, at the start of the call, right? And using AI to dynamically tailor creative in the moment, making sure that you're using all the assets that are available to you. Again, in sports, that can be things like scores, odds, milestones, and then using that to kind of generate this hyper relevant ad creative in real time, personalized, and making that available to your partners, making it easy to use. That for us has been a big win. I'll give an example, like when it comes to like audio ads, audio is a growing channel as part of the media mix. You probably listen to podcasts and things and you get ads. One of the barriers to entry for brands to use audio ads is that you gotta create like the actual clip, right? Like you gotta go have a recording studio, and you gotta prepare a script, and you gotta hire someone to read it, and then you probably have to translate that into different languages. It's a lot of manual work, and then if you want to have that content be updated because there's another sports game on tomorrow, or another sports that you want to target against, you start seeing that there's a big kind of development need. And using AI, there's tools. We have one in Sportradar, right, accessible for our clients, where you just write the copy and you pick the language and you pick the person, and you have yourself an ad, right? And then it's spoken and it sounds like a real person, and it just reduces kind of time for and cost for the client to develop it. And as a result, kind of was one of the ways that we were able to get a lot of our clients to test using audio as one of the channels as part of their media mix.
Thank you, Hampus. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Randy. A virtual round of applause for doing this. Thank you to Sportradar for the support for this 3-part series. We really appreciate it. To the audience, thank you so much for joining us. Please, I'm going to drop my email in the chat. You can reach me at dkaufman, DKAUFMAN, at sportsbusinessjournal.com. Tell me how we did. Tell me how we can do better. I want to make sure that we deliver these SBJ Live sessions to you as effectively as possible, and you, the audience, are the most important. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.